everybody? What's up? How you doing? My name is Matt. Matt Slater, aka Matty Slay, and I am glad that you guys have joined us for today's live workshop from Pop Culture Classroom, all about designing villains. So thank you guys for joining us here today. I've got Dion with us. Dion, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, hello. My name is Dion Harris, aka the Shoe Thief, as you guys probably know me on Twitch here. I am a professional illustrator. That just means I draw things for a living and get money for it. And I also work for the Pop Culture Classroom.
Excellent. We're so glad to have you today. If you guys have ever joined us for one of our workshops before, you're going to notice that today looks a little bit different. We're trying some new stuff here. So as always, feel free to participate with us in the chat. Dion's got an interactive workshop planned for us today. We're trying out some new technology. So if you experience any issues on your end, feel free to get in the chat and let us know what's going on. If there's any sort of lag or volume issues or anything like that. Some of them we might be able to fix today. Others we might have to wait till our next stream, but your feedback is really, really important to us. So let us know how we're doing. Let us know how everything looks. So today is all about designing villains, designing dastardly villains, no matter what you're designing for, right? So whether it is a comic or you're designing an idea for a video game or you're writing a prose novel, having an awesome villain can be really, really important. So I want to start, Dion, what is your favorite villain in pop culture and why?
Um, Honestly, I think my favorite villain is the Purple Man from the Jessica Jones Netflix series.
Okay, I haven't seen
And
that
oh, it is incredible. At least season one is incredible.
yet.
Um, I
what
mean, the
what
others are
makes
pretty good, but
what makes him such a good villain?
oh, they actually like kind of get into the psychology of why he is the way he is. And he's basically, to put it in, I guess, easy terms, he's like an evil Professor X from the X Men.
Okay,
So he
okay.
can kind of like mess with people's minds, but he's been able to do it from such a young age that he doesn't realize that not everybody wants to do what he tells them to do.
Hmm.
And it is such, man, it's such a chilling representation of what psionics would be like in a real life.
Is that kind of like the is it like a sympathetic villain? Like, do we feel bad for him at all?
You feel a little bad sometimes, but he's so bad that you're just like, can anybody stop this guy?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Nice.
he's a very very well played villain. He's played by oh, I just forgot the guy's name, but he was one of the Doctor Who's. Um,
Okay.
oh man, I can't remember his name, but he's amazing. Like hands down, best villain. Like, and this is even knowing like the Heath Ledger version of the Joker.
Mm.
So I
Wow. Okay.
definitely like recommend checking out at least season one of Jessica Jones
Okay.
because he is amazing.
Yeah, that is a ringing endorsement. So season one of
Yeah,
Jessica Jones, gotta check that out. My favorite villain from pop culture is, I'm a video gamer, and The Legend
yeah,
of Zelda is my absolute favorite game series, and I really like Ganon because like throughout all the different versions of the
yeah,
game, he always takes some sort of different form, whether it's his human form of Ganondorf or more like his animal beast form. So you
yeah,
get to see lots of different sides to him throughout the game series. Cool.
yeah.
Well, you guys, if you're watching live, if you got a favorite villain, feel free to put that in the chat and tell us why that's your favorite villain. We might be able to bring that into the conversation today. But with that, Dion, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you for the kind of the workshop portion of our program today.
Alrighty. So as Matt said earlier, we're going to be working on designing our own villains. So I'm basically just going to go over a few different, like I guess, archetypes of villains. So there are a few that you guys will probably find very familiar, and a few that you guys will probably realize that you've seen before, but you didn't like actually realize what they were. So I'm just going to be going over a few different archetypes to start with. And there are actually a lot more than the ones that I'm going to be going over, but since this is only an hour long course, I'm only going to be touching on three today.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
those three are going to be the brute.
Dion, should we be seeing your screen right now?
Oh, I didn't even realize I was a screen sharing.
No worries. Yeah, go ahead and screen share for us, and we'll make sure the audience can see what you're, because I'm sure you're
Yeah.
writing down some good stuff.
There we
All
go.
right, while you're getting that set up, Kelly Beach says, Dr. Horrible. Are you talking about Dr. Horrible's sing along blog there, Kelly?
Oh, such a good. Oh, I love
Because
Doctor
that is
Horrible singing on
great.
blog. Yeah.
All right, let me make sure that everyone can see your screen here, Dion. All right, and then you are free to take it away whenever you're ready.
Alrighty. So I'm gonna be going over the brute, the mind, or mastermind, whatever you want to call it, and the switch.
The Switch. I'm interested to see what that's. I can't
These are
like
all,
immediately think of like what that might be.
yeah, these are all names that I just made up. So,
I like that. There you go.
um, but yeah, I guess starting with the brute. So when you're designing like a brute kind of villain, the main thing you want to kind of focus on is the character's size. So, I mean, since they're supposed to be a brute, you want them to be kind of like big and hulking. To what degree you want them to be hulking, that's kind of up to you, depending on if you're telling like a superhero tale or more of a realistic tale. It could um, it can change the size of your character. But I'm gonna design for a superhero kind of story.
Okay, awesome.
So the character is gonna be much larger than a regular human. So a couple of the things that you're going to want to do, and I'm going to just kind of sketch this out very loosely in the beginnings.
Cool. And I like what you just said there. Like, for a superhero story, you want to think about different things than you might for like a horror story or something like that. So I like how you pointed
Yeah,
out for superheroes, you want it to be, kind of big, larger than life.
yeah, definitely. In fact, like I don't if any of you guys have been in any of our other courses, you've heard me say, the average person is about 7.5 heads to 8 heads tall. Well, for the brute character, um, you can get up to like 10 to 12 heads tall. So your size is going to vary greatly amongst these different variations of villains. Um, so starting with the head, it's going to be an average sized head. And actually, I'll make it a little smaller so we can fit the rest of the body in as well. And this is actually kind of a trick for making your brute characters look even bigger is if you give them, an average sized human head, but then you make their bodies much larger than what an average sized person would be.
Oh,
And you can
that's a good
see
trick.
this kind of body structure. Yeah, it works like 100% of the time.
I'm thinking of the of Kingpin from Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. The Kingpin from Spider-Man, or the Juggernaut. That's another good
Mm.
example. Some cases, the Hulk. I mean, he's been a villain. Um, Actually, he's a villain right now in the stories. But yeah, if you make your character's body a bit bigger than what their head would suggest, it automatically gives them kind of a big hulking build. And you'll notice that as I'm kind of sketching this out, I'm keeping his proportions a bit wider than they are tall. And that's another trick you can use to kind of make your characters look a bit bigger. Um, but yeah, I'm going to sketch this out pretty quickly because I also want to show you guys a couple different variations as well. Um, but yeah, if you're sketching out like a kind of a brute character, you want them to look like big and hulking and imposing. So you want to keep your proportions larger than what they appear to be in reality.
So Dion, if someone
Um,
was kind of like sketching along, if they were kind of mimicking what you were doing right now, I know you're using Photoshop right now, but if they were working with pencil paper or they were working digitally, what sort of things would they need to keep in
mhm.
mind while they're kind of doing these building blocks?
The main thing you want to keep in mind is you want to draw as lightly as possible in the beginning, just because these are construction lines. So these are lines that I'm going to be erasing and totally eliminating from the final picture. So just draw as lightly as possible in the beginning.
Okay, there you go.
Also, this is actually a Clip Studio Paint.
Oh, my bad.
It's
Okay.
very similar to Photoshop. Is That's why the interface looks very similar, but it's a different program. And the only reason I'm using this is because I'm on my drawing pad right now,
Mm.
and it can't handle Photoshop.
Yeah, that's real. I
Photoshop
know
is a bit too intensive.
my laptop is struggling under the weight of all the things I've got it
Yeah,
doing right now just to get this stream going.
yeah, I can
Um,
imagine.
but for those listening, Clip Studio Paint, that's a free program, right?
Yes. Oh
Excellent.
no, no, it's not free. It's actually I think it's like $50 a month right now.
Okay,
Clip Studio goes through a lot of sales like every other month, so it's pretty easy to pick it up for fairly cheap.
got it. Okay.
And I guess one of the good things about it as opposed to Photoshop is once you buy it, you're done.
Mm,
So it's not a subscription service,
got it. Okay.
which is really cool. Yeah.
I know
But other than that,
if you're looking for a free program, I know Krita is out there and would be a great one to
yeah,
use.
yeah, Krita is very similar to Photoshop. Is actually Krita, um, GIMP, and Paint Tool Sci are
Mm,
all free programs that are very similar to Photoshop. So
perfect. So if you're
if you
out
guys
there
are,
and you don't want to take the plunge and pay for a program yet, though, there's some
yeah,
good options to learn the digital stuff.
absolutely. Um, so yeah, I'm just blocking this stuff in pretty quickly. I'm not really worrying too much about the actual anatomy of the character.
Mm.
Um, just keeping it kind of like larger than life. So I actually drew his head just a little too small, but that's all right because we're still in the construction line phase. So if there's something that you want to change, then feel free to go in and change that thing because this is your drawing. So you're the boss of it. When you say it's done, that's when it's done.
That's right. But don't let perfection get to you, right? Don't
Exactly.
let perfection freeze you from ever finishing. But that's right. Take your time
Yeah,
and make it right for you.
absolutely. Yeah, you guys have. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the writer Alan Brooks, but we worked
Mhm.
together on the Burning Metronome, and one of the things we always said was finished, not perfect.
There you go. Yep.
So just try to get something finished as opposed to making it perfect, because perfection is an illusion and it'll handicap you and kind of paralyze you from actually getting actual work done. And as you'll find, the more work that you actually get done is actually going to help you improve a lot faster than if you try to make everything perfect.
Mm.
So actually just focus on putting pencil to paper and getting something put down.
Yep.
And that's going to get you much further along than if you try to make everything perfect the first time.
Yeah, I know in my process, I have to like put everything down before I start editing, before I reread or anything. I can't look at it with a
Yeah.
critical eye until like there's something there. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so what's going through your mind as you're like thinking about this brute design here?
As I'm thinking about the brute design, since I already kind of had like the Juggernaut and the Hulk in mind, I'm
Mm.
kind of going with like a really like overly muscled kind of character.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now. But the brute doesn't have to be like overly muscled, and in fact, I'll show you like a variation after I finish this quick sketch. But the brute can also be just somebody that's like just larger than normal. They don't have to be like overly muscled. They just have to be, big. That's pretty much all that means. Um,
I was just thinking of Big Barda from not a villain, but Mr. Miracle, Big Barda.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's a villain to some people. I mean, she's done some pretty messed up stuff.
Okay, fair, fair. In the most recent story I read, she was not the villain.
Yeah. But yeah, Big Bart is actually a really good example of a brute, which some people might not realize. But Big Barda, I think she's what, like 6'9" or something like that, which
She's real
is
big.
much large. Yeah, she's a big girl.
Yeah.
And
Teens and
yeah,
adults out there, if you haven't read the latest Mr. Miracle graphic novel, that's one you got to pick up.
oh, it is excellent. Like I usually don't read like a lot of DC stories lately, just because the whole brightest night thing kind of, I don't know, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. So
Mm,
I started focusing more on like their smaller characters, because the big stuff just kind of threw me for a loop.
yeah.
But the Mr. Miracle graphic novel was excellent,
So good.
so good. Like if they make another DC movie, that's what they should do, because it was amazing.
You don't even have to change much.
Yeah, that always kills me about DC is like um, their actual cartoon series, like the Justice League Unlimited, is so much better than a lot of the movies they've been putting out recently. I wish they just like turn some of those into like actual movie franchises, because the
Mm.
writing was excellent.
Now,
Yeah.
obviously, the character that you're drawing right now, the pose that you picked for him, you know,
Hmm.
is very, it tells a lot. Just looking at the way that character's standing, that tells me a lot about this character's demeanor, and the eyes kind of is time telling me that's a villain. That is definitely not a hero.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I did to make him look kind of imposing is put him in like a combat stance. So it's not like he's sitting there like wanting to shake your hand or anything. Like he's obviously antagonistic towards, the viewer.
Yeah, I don't want to shake
So
his hand.
yeah,
I would not have a hand after that.
yeah. But yeah. So that's just the rough sketch. Um, so one of the things that I also want to touch on is not only the superhero version of the brute character, but let's say you wanted to make, I guess, a more fantasy or horror based
Mm,
character based on this brute archetype. That's when you can actually go in and start adding some more like monstrous attributes to the character. Um, and what I usually do for like adding monstrous attributes is I look at like animal and insect images,
okay, I like that.
because yeah, one of the things that I found is that if you just add like a little bit of realism, like add like some real creature anatomy or something into your monsters, it makes them all that much more believable.
Mm,
And
okay.
you might find like in a lot of like the Hollywood movies that you watch, like you'll find some like anatomy or something that looks very similar to creatures that you've seen. A lot of people actually use deep sea creatures for their monster anatomy
Mm-hmm.
because they look so alien. But I mean, they're realistic because they're real, so it adds that level of realism to their imagined creatures.
Yeah, those of you guys who
So
are watching right now, again, we're talking about brute characters. If you can think of any brute characters that come to mind from pop culture and why you might like them or what makes them kind of imposing, definitely drop that in the chat and let us know.
yeah.
Another recommendation, if you really are looking for like anatomy design, there's a show. It's not on the air anymore, but you can find it on Amazon and things like that called Face Off, and it is
Oh, Face
a
Off is so good.
yeah, it is a special effects design challenge. So, and they're
Mm-hmm.
given designs to or challenges to design makeup special effects. And that was one thing, Dion, that they said all the time is if you go into nature, go
Yeah.
into deep sea bugs. Like if you look at a
Mm-hmm.
cockroach's face up close, like that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And so using like that to kind of inspire your designs. I see. It looks like right now you've got kind of a Cthulhu inspired design
Yeah.
going.
The whole squid head demigod thingy that they have going on in the Cthulhu mythology. Yeah. And
Nice.
another thing that can kind of help your characters, well, your villains, seem more villainous is asymmetry.
Mm,
So one of the things that I sometimes do when I'm designing like monstrous creatures is just put like some sort of like, I don't know, random lumps or like kind of like misshapen sections on the character,
ooh.
which doesn't actually like, immediately say villain, but it conveys discomfort with you.
Yeah,
So
I see
that's
that.
something that, yeah,
Like
yeah, can
even you
kind
just
of,
making those lines, like the difference you can see instantly about how that makes you feel.
yeah, yeah. So it's a little artist trick for putting for making the viewer discomfortable or
Mm.
uncomfortable. I don't know why I said discomfortable.
I mean, it makes sense to me. We find beauty in symmetry, right? So it makes sense to see the
Yeah.
opposite in without symmetry.
Hmm. Yeah, that's just another little trick that you can use when you're creating like monstrous creatures. Um, and another thing that I'm going to get into more with the mind um, character that we're going to be doing in just a bit is shape language. So for
Mm.
shape language, there are certain shapes that humans naturally have specific feelings towards, and one of those important shapes is like pointy things or things that look kind of pointy or prickly. Um, and actually, what time is it? Yeah, I can go ahead and switch over to the mind character now.
Okay, awesome.
But yeah, so one of the things with kind of like pointy shapes is that they convey a sense of danger. Um, so the difference between the brute character and the mind character is while the brute is more of like a physical force or a physical opponent that you're going to have to deal with, the mind character or the overlord is kind of more of a character that has power and also has minions. So it's
Mm.
like you're not just fighting the mind character, you're also fighting whatever organization that this character is control of.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah. And
That already makes it like more foreboding.
yeah.
It's not just one person; it's a whole
uh,
like swarm.
yeah, exactly. And there's a reason that this mind character is in control of that organization too. It could be that they're like a magician, or they have some sort of magical powers that makes them formidable.
Mm.
But the main thing that you want to focus on with a mind character is they don't have to be really big and imposing. And actually, in most circumstances, it actually works a bit better if they aren't really physically strong looking. So you can make them very slender and willowy, and they'll still kind of have an imposing presence if you use a couple of these tricks that I'm about to show you guys really quickly.
Yeah, so one of
And
the things that Dion's talking about here that we've seen are like these archetypes, right? These character archetypes. And so we could think of all
mhm.
these representations in pop culture of the brute. So now I'm trying to think of like the mind villain. I'm watching the anime Kill La Kill right now.
Oh, I
And the
haven't
main
started
villain
it
in
yet.
that, oh yeah, she controls, well, I don't want to give anything away, no spoilers, but that's an example of that villain. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm most of the way through this series and I can't let
Yeah.
everything go. I'm trying to think other, Magneto, I guess might be an example of this.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of
Mhm.
those with like their minions that they control. What can you think of, Dion?
With minions that control, I mean, this is a kind of a well, no, he fits. Darth Vader is a very good example. I mean, he's
Definitely,
not
yeah.
like really like big and muscular or anything, but
Oh, but
he's
he
foreboding.
he is tall. If you've played the VR game
Yeah,
Vader Unleashed, Vader's like 7 feet tall. But you're right.
yeah,
He doesn't have
he's
like that
tall.
big muscular threat behind him. Honestly, I'm thinking like
Yeah,
Jeff Bezos. If someone made Jeff Bezos into a villain, I'm pretty
yeah,
sure South Park did that at one point.
yeah. That wouldn't surprise me.
He would have
But
mind control.
yeah, yeah. So like they don't have to be really like muscular, but being tall is a definite plus.
Mm.
Actually, what's his name? The guy from the Lord of the Rings. Is it Sauron?
Sauron, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's not really big and muscular. Like he's still kind of tall and thin, but
Hmm.
he's tall, so he still conveys that really like imposing presence. And another thing that he has, which I'm about to draw on this character here, is he has a lot of pointy shapes,
Mm.
and that is something that always makes people feel a bit uncomfortable, just because I mean, pointy shapes are sharp, and they convey a
They can
sense of
hurt you.
danger. Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking like Darth Maul. The first time you saw Darth Maul when I was a
Yeah,
kid, yeah, like all his horns.
yeah,
The Night King. There.
yes,
That's a great example of one. Yeah,
yeah, perfect
the Night
example.
King from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a trick to make your character look more dangerous, and it doesn't only work for villains. As you probably notice, Batman and Wolverine both have a lot of very pointy shapes in their designs,
Yeah. Yes.
and that's because as far as heroes go, they're close to being villains just because their motivations. I mean, not their motivations, but they're all focused on like intimidating villains
Mm-hmm.
and making them feel fear. And the way that's conveyed is through not only their color choices, which they usually pick darker colors, which help them blend into the night and such things,
Mm.
but the pointy shapes in their designs really convey a sense of danger.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
trying to think. You can't really think of many villains that have like soft, round features.
yeah, yeah.
That's just not as common.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few which we're gonna get into with the Switch,
Ah, okay,
which
okay.
is what the Switch is, but
Okay, there it
save
is.
that for a little bit. Yeah, but usually sharp shapes really convey like a sense of danger or a sense of evil.
Hmm.
Really, if you look at like I guess demons as they're like
Hmm.
commonly um, shown with like the big horns and everything.
Right,
If you
yeah,
add horns onto your character, it's automatically going to make them look a bit more intimidating,
for
even
sure.
if they're a hero.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing for the like kind of the overlord or the mind kind of character, which I mean we were talking about Magneto earlier,
Hmm.
so this is a big part of his design, but it's his cape.
Mm.
And Magneto and both Doctor Doom, they both have these long, kind of like billowing robe like capes. And
That just changes the whole
aside
silhouette.
from,
Like,
yeah, it really changes the whole silhouette. And that's another thing, like the whole triangle design, and you can kind of fit that into your character's silhouette, is going to make them look even more intimidating or dangerous because it's only reinforcing that pointy design.
those angles, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, what time is it? Oh, it's only 5:30. Okay, so another thing that I usually do for like these overlord or mind type characters is I kind of tend to make their armor or whatever they're wearing look more ceremonial than
Mm.
practical, and that just kind of conveys a sense of, they're wearing this for status. It's more of a status symbol as opposed to like something that like physically protects them,
Got
because they
it,
don't
yeah.
need it. There's something else about them that makes them formidable. Uh,
Yeah, I think a lot of like, especially like in Japanese RPGs, I feel like you see a lot of that in those villains, like your Final
yeah,
Fantasy and things like that.
yeah. Um, let's see what we have. Also, when I'm usually like designing characters in the beginning, I tend to stick to just black and white, um, just because it's pretty easy to add colors on top of your black and white images in Photoshop. And if you're just designing in black and white, it's much easier to just kind of throw something out there and see what happens, as opposed to if you're also thinking about color,
Mm, yeah,
which you can always think about like later on in the image.
definitely. I feel
Um,
like yeah, that silhouette and your angles, those are kind of the more important. That's what you see first, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, oh, another thing that I tend to do with villain designs in general um, is for the face, is if they're wearing like a mask or something that doesn't let you see their eyes. That's another thing that can kind of make the villain seem a bit more intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
because as humans, like we usually like look at each other's eyes when we're like speaking to each other,
Mm-hmm.
because that's like a big conveyor of emotion and everything, and
Yeah.
it's something that we inherently feel comfort in. And if you take that away and you can't like tell what the character's expression is, it also conveys that sense of discomfort,
Yeah, and if
which
the eyes are the window into the soul, if you're not showing me like what are
exactly,
you hiding, you know?
yeah, exactly,
There's just darkness in there.
yeah. So that's another little trick you can use to make your villains feel even more imposing. Um,
Now, with what you're designing now, either when designing characters, you can go from like an outward in approach where you kind of design the shape and the image first, or you could go
mhm.
from inside out and you could think, what is this character's background, what have they been through in life, what are their motivations, and
Yeah,
use that to motivate. So as what is your process like when you're designing a villain?
honestly, it really depends on where I am in, like with my story.
Mm,
Like if I have like a specific character in mind that the villain's supposed to be the foil for, then I'll usually come up with the villain's backstory first.
mm-hmm,
But if I'm just kind of like designing on the fly and I'm not really sure about the villain's motivations or anything, then I kind of just come up with like a really cool or creepy design first,
mm,
and then I'll build in the background after that. Which honestly, I usually don't do that. I usually go for like the characters like inner motivations and stuff first,
mm-hmm.
because that as a designer that just like really helps me kind of like focus on what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm. So these are
But
kind of like the silhouette things that you're showing us are kind of can be applied to any villain, but when you're designing a villain, it sounds like it's always a good idea to really be thinking about them as a person, right? And their
yeah,
background and where they came from and how that can influence, kind of like Two Face or
absolutely.
those where it's shown a little bit through that design.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I really love about manga in general
Mm,
is a lot of the times the when you're like focused on the hero for most of the story, and actually One Piece does this amazingly, is that right before the showdown between the protagonist and the main villain of the story, they'll do kind of like a flashback into the villain's past,
mm,
so you can see like what motivates them.
mm-hmm,
And if you have a really strong villain, it only makes your hero seem that much more heroic. Um, you guys probably have seen this for yourselves, like with like Loki or the Joker. Like a really strong villain, like only helps your hero in the long run.
mm-hmm. And then if you have a villain that sticks around for a while, you can just reinvent their backstory as many times as you want.
Yeah,
In the case of the Joker.
yeah. His backstory has been reinvented so many
So many different
times.
times.
Yeah.
If y'all haven't read the 80th anniversary anthology of the Joker's 80th anniversary yet, there's some really cool standalone short stories in there about the Joker.
Hmm. Yeah, there was this character in One Piece that I actually kind of wish that the Joker's backstory was more like. But he basically starts like this holy war between he's like a fish person, and he starts this holy war between like fish people and like land dwellers. And in like one of the climactic battles, like the main hero like asks him like why is he so like mad, and like what did the humans ever do to him, and he just kind of looks at him and he says nothing. And it's like just that little that one line just lets you know that this character is absolutely insane,
That's
and like
threatening,
he's
right? You
just
don't.
doing the yeah.
There's no motivation. What do you do to
Yeah,
combat that? Dion, I don't have time to
exactly.
watch One Piece. I don't need you to sell me on. I
Yeah.
think I might be sold, but
Yeah.
don't send me down any
It's
rabbit holes
such a
now.
good series. I know. um but yeah, so with the mind character, I'm mainly kind of designing a character that looks intimidating, but not necessarily physically as much as the brute. Like, I mean, she still looks like she could do some damage if you got close to her, but whereas the brute's main focus was on being physically imposing, The mind is more on being almost a symbol
Mm.
of the organization that they work for.
Hmm.
So you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to have them um, just like this massive creature that could cause massive physical destruction.
Well, and like think about this character that you've drawn right here. You know, them standing on the ground is one thing, but then if you think about
Hmm.
them floating even like 1 or 2 feet off the
Yeah.
ground, like that makes them that much
Hmm.
more threatening.
Exactly. And actually, I'll go ahead and add that in because it just enhances the storytelling of the character design so much.
Mm.
Like
Where
it's
they're
clear
positioned,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, it's clear now that physical combat is not all they're about.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever they're using to make themselves float, they could probably use it to hurt you as
Yeah,
well.
right.
um, but yeah, so
Yeah, this definitely looks like something I would fight in like Diablo. You know.
right. Have a bunch of minions around or something. But usually, once I get to this point, once I get to like the finished kind of like line portion, I'll usually go over it. I'll add a layer on top and clip that layer to the layer right below it, which I usually do in Photoshop. I'm not going to worry about it this time.
Mm.
Um, and I'll set the layer to multiply, which all multiply does is it makes sure that anything below the layer of below it, um, it doesn't um, color over that layer. It only darkens it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
So it's kind of like keeping it intact, right? If you want to go back to
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, it keeps that layer intact. And so even if I kind of lighten this multiply layer, like I color over it, and you can still see the dark lines beneath it
Mm-hmm. Okay.
because all multiply does is darken everything that's beneath the layer that it's on.
Got it. Okay.
So I'll usually go into multiply after this and kind of color in my character silhouette. And you don't have to be super neat about it because you can always erase some of this stuff afterwards. Then I'll add a layer on top of that, and that's the layer that I'll actually start adding like my highlights and different things on top of. So this is where I actually get into like the actual like I guess painting of the character.
Mm. Yeah, some good tips for you folks that are learning the digital drawing.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely,
taking
yeah.
notes down here for sure.
Yeah, and I'll usually set this layer to screen, and it's the exact opposite of multiply. It basically lightens everything that's beneath it. So I'll use this to do all of my highlights on. Um, and since we're not really going to get into like materials or anything
Hmm.
in this class, I usually use this for like painting metals and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Because it's really good for like laying in highlights like really quickly.
Yeah, to get that kind of material, emulating that like sheen that it's got.
Yeah. Oops.
Well, Dion, while you are kind of finishing that part up, we're gonna take like a 2 minute break. We're gonna take a word from our sponsors real quick, and
Cool.
then we'll come right back to it and see how this turned out. And then I know we've got one more archetype that we want to talk about as well.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, folks, we're going to take a quick break. Here's a word from our sponsor. Spoiler alert: the sponsor is us.
Are you ready, Ellen? I definitely want to honor you all for joining us and for your work, which is so dear to us, and we're excited to discuss.
When I read Kiss Number 8, I fell in love with it. But the biggest thing is that now's the time for this kind of book.
And then we could see Ellen's process of drawing the pages. So she puts all my giant, this actually is like not that many words per page compared to what I normally do.
Empathy taught in the classroom seems like an excellent opportunity to talk about the characters and why they make certain decisions, whether they're good or bad.
That's how I plan to use it in my classroom, but I plan to use it a lot for the empathy and character traits.
I found out halfway through the book that Ellen was taking reference photos for so much of the body language, because body language is so important, especially for like teen emotions.
Do you have any particular ways that you would like to see this book used in classrooms, and how do you see it fitting into a curriculum?
All right. That's right, guys. We sponsor our own content here. Pop Culture Classroom, if you haven't heard of us, we are a Denver nonprofit. We're all about educating through pop culture. And one of the things that we do is the Excellence in Graphic Literature Awards, which is an awards program for brand new graphic novels. And this year, we're doing something special. We're doing a little book club with our young adult and adult winners. So this next Friday, we have our book club coming up for our adult fiction winning title, which is The Hard Tomorrow. So you can join us here on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook live if you want to participate in a Q&A with those creators. Or you can watch it after the fact just to have a really cool in-depth discussion about the book, what makes it special, and if you're an educator or a librarian especially, how to use that book in those settings. So we hope you guys can join us for that. So Dion, what have you done here since we cut away to that video?
The only thing I've done is kind of like start laying in some values, just so you guys can get a sense of the materials that our costume is made out of. So I kind of gave this top portion like the appearance of being like metallic. So it's almost like she's wearing like a ceremonial armor up top. And then most of what she's wearing below is all cloth, which is not something that you'd really ordinarily wear into battle. Like you kind of like want everything to be protected. But again, like whatever power that she's using to levitate or control her minions is actually what protects her. All of this other stuff is just ceremonial garb.
It's just for show.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm assuming if you're a villain, you might have accumulated some wealth and you want to show it off somehow, right?
Exactly. What better way to show it off than ceremonial armor and robes?
I threaten you with my money.
Yeah.
There are many villains that do that.
Oh, yeah. Especially modern day.
In pop culture or not.
Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, it's 5:45. So we're gonna switch to the switch archetype now.
All right, so the switch archetype. What do you mean when you say that?
So the switch archetype, I just couldn't really think of a better name for this. So maybe you guys can think of a better name. But it's when a character doesn't physically appear to be a villain, but they are, or when they appear to be something cute, but twisted in a way that makes them villainous.
Okay. So I'm trying to think. Maybe Dolores Umbridge a little bit.
Yes. From Harry Potter, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
she
absolutely.
is dressed in pink,
Perfect example.
loves her cats and her crochet and things like that, but really she is not a very nice person.
Absolutely. Yeah, perfect example. So the switch, as Matt just said, it's when somebody is dressed in a very uh non-assuming way, or like the exact opposite of what you'd expect from a villain. So like bright colors, or very happy in appearance, but they're actually one of the worst people that you'll run into in your franchise. The switch is like really really effective um, if you use it properly. So
I'm
you'll
trying to think of
notice,
other examples. Yeah.
yeah. One of the things that you can do for the Switch is just kind of design as if you were designing your protagonist's mentor, or like grandmother, or like mother. So if you think of like turning Aunt May from Spider-Man into
Mm-hmm.
a villain, that's a really good look for
Mm.
a Switch type villain.
Or I
Um,
guess like the creepy little girl, maybe.
yes, absolutely. That's a really good example. Like Pet Cemetery. What was that little kid's
Mm.
name? Gage. Perfect example. Um, so we're just gonna go with kind of a almost like a motherly figure. Something you wouldn't expect to be
Yeah, like
as a villain of the
like the,
series.
the the fairy godmother entangled, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so they're gonna be using like rounder shapes, which in shape language, rounder shapes usually give you the feeling of youthfulness or comfort.
Mm.
So rounder shapes are usually much less intimidating than like triangular shapes or sharp pointy shapes or even squares. Um, so that's one thing that you can do to make your characters or your villains for the switch archetype look much more or much less unassuming.
Hmm. So now, and when you talk about shape language, you're talking about like the things that we kind of automatically think and feel when we see certain shapes, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like a good example is like a square, a circle, and a triangle. Like these shapes are so prevalent in like human history,
Hmm.
and they've almost been programmed to mean like specific things. For instance, if I just turn this circle right here, oops, red,
Hmm.
then automatically it looks like record, stop, and play. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
just like one example of how shapes are so ingrained
Hmm.
into like our human psyche or whatever.
Yeah, we have shape bias.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Another thing is you might want to make them smiling,
Mm.
because their role isn't to be like the intimidation or the dominating kind of person. They're meant to be more of a surprise,
Right, right.
an, un, an unpleasant surprise for your protagonist.
They're like the spider that's luring you into their web.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make this character seem a lot more inviting. But there's another version of the switch that I'm gonna show you guys as well, um, which is just as effective. I'll give them a
Oh, nice. Okay.
nice typical hairstyle. Um, and as far as clothing, um, I'm gonna go more modern day just because we've been a bit more focused on that lately. So I'm gonna give them clothing that just kind of pushes the idea of them being, non-threatening.
Sure.
So they're not going to be wearing like a spiked leather jacket or anything like that.
Yeah, I guess their goal would be not to stand out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When you see something, especially when it takes place in modern day, when you see something that isn't as modern, that automatically kind of ticks you off as to like, why? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that Seinfeld episode where the guy was like his what was this his lawyer that was walking around wearing a cape. Like that's not something you normally see people wearing, so it's automatically going to kind of set off your like, oh, I should be paying attention to this person kind of thing.
You know, growing up, I'm pretty sure I saw like every episode of Seinfeld on reruns, but that one does not come to mind immediately.
It's so weird. It's such a weird episode.
Okay, so I see how you turned, because when you started drawing the hair, I was like, I'm not really sure where this is going, but I see how you turned those building blocks into that shape. I love that.
Oh yeah, yeah. So usually when I'm like drawing hair, I always draw like the big main shapes 1st,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go back in and like add all the details and like the little swishy things that let you see exactly what hairstyle it is.
Makes sense.
But in general, I can't remember. I think the rule is like the 80-20 rule. Like you use like you draw in the 80% of the design first, and then you save the 20% for all the little details.
Okay.
So yeah. And actually, let's give her a dress, a long ankle-length dress.
Okay. She's ready. She's ready for a night out.
Yeah.
She's ready for the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, already like I look at this character, and again my biases are like, she's gonna make me a pie, and I'm gonna have a great time like chatting, and you know, she's gonna ask me how my day's been.
Yeah. Even put a smile on her face so that she seems very inviting.
Right.
But it's all a trick.
But that makes me all the more interested as to like what this character's backstory is and what made them evil.
Yeah. So that's one version. The other version that I want to show you guys really quickly, and for any of you that have watched like what was it, Afro Samurai?
Yes.
Then this will really, like, you've seen this kind of thing before, or if you played Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oof.
So you take like stuffed animals, like something that's supposed to be super cutesy, like a Care Bear or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you turn that into a mask or something that's hiding something like insidious underneath.
I'm thinking this is also reminding me of Umbrella Academy.
Oh yeah.
You know, they wear those big mask things. Yeah. Or even like the Purge or any of those. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a bunch of different examples of this. But yeah, take something that's ordinarily supposed to be like, you know, reassuring or comforting, and then you twist that and turn it into something villainous. It could be super, super effective.
I mean, Chucky gave me nightmares.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't watch it as a kid, but when I would walk by the box art at Blockbuster, that was enough to give me nightmares.
Yeah.
So, you know, that cute doll that then they just turn into something very, very sinister. Yeah. But, you know, I like how, you know, in that example, that's something that visually they took and distorted, right? So that, you know, even though it started as something innocent, you could see right off that it was something sinister. What you're drawing here is something that could still be in line with that switch, could still be something very innocent.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody's watching right now, we have about 5 minutes left. So if you guys have any questions for Dion about, you know, his process in designing villains, or, you know, if you're working on a design and you have a question, definitely feel free to drop that in the chat and we'll get that answered before we log off here in a few.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a teddy bear in a trench coat.
Yeah. Oh, a onesie like Michael Myers.
Oh, yeah.
Which, for some reason, putting a character in like workman's clothes is also something that makes them more intimidating for some reason. I don't know why, but it works. So.
Well, Dion, what resources, so like if someone is learning, you've gone through a lot of drawing the human figure, right? And I feel like those are some kind of skills that you definitely need if you're going to be drawing human villains. If someone were just kind of starting out, what sort of resources would you recommend for them? Where should they look to kind of start building up those building blocks?
I definitely recommend checking out Andrew Loomis's work. He's a an illustrator from back in the day, but you can find most of his books online for free now.
Okay.
Um, he's definitely one I suggest checking out. Also on YouTube, I'd say check out Modern Day
Hmm.
James, Proco, and Carla Ortiz. They're all like amazing illustrators. Carla Ortiz is a bit more um, advanced, so maybe don't check her out if you're like pretty new to this whole art thing.
Yeah, if you're just starting out.
But yeah, yeah, I
I would
definitely
not
suggest.
start there.
No. But yeah, those are all artists that I definitely suggest checking out their work, because that's what I did. I mean, I probably should have said this in
Yeah,
the
you're
beginning, but I'm
self-taught.
all yeah, I'm self-taught, which basically means I didn't go to art school and I learned everything by looking at videos and stuff online.
Hmm.
I learned from was it Dan Warren and Dave Raposa with the Crimson Daggers. So if any of you guys are familiar with them, that's where I got my start.
Mm,
So
nice.
free knowledge.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so this is basically the last design for the Switch character. Another thing I do is like put some blood on their costume somewhere,
Hmm.
or something even that's even creepier to do that I found is if you can see their eyes in the mask.
Oh, like you can see
So it's like,
the eyes behind the mask.
yeah, yeah, you
Huh.
can see like there's some creepy person that's in there, like staring back at you.
In our last EGL book club, we talked about the book King of King Court, and eyes were a major feature in that book. You have
Mm,
kids with big old circles with nothing inside, representing like how wide open they are, and on the other hand, the
oh
quote unquote
wow,
villain of that story was wearing sunglasses, wearing aviator sunglasses the entire time. So
that's
like
cool.
eyes can have such a big impact.
Yeah.
Um, and speaking of the EGL Book Club, once again, we're talking about The Hard Tomorrow by Eleanor Davis next Friday. So you've got time to pick up that book, read that book, check it out, and tune in for a really awesome conversation. And Eleanor herself, the creator herself, is going to be in on that conversation with us. So it's a great opportunity to ask questions. If you were confused or you want to know more about how that book was made, if you tune in live, you can put those questions in the chat and we'll go get those answered live for you. Well, Dion, do you have any kind of like last things to add for us, or where can people find your stuff to go check you out a little bit more?
Yeah. You can find my stuff on Twitch under the tagline "The Shoe Thief," or if you just do a search for Dion Harris or the Shoe Thief online, my stuff is usually the first thing that comes up. Um,
That's how you know you
one
made
thing,
it.
yeah, yeah, not yet, but close.
Getting
But
there.
yeah, getting there. But yeah, I'd suggest like definitely checking out those people I told you guys about on YouTube, because it's kind of like a Pandora's box. Like once you start looking at those people, then they'll link you to other people, and those people will link you to other people, um, and it'll really like give you a good idea of things to do in the art industry. Also, check out ArtStation. I should plug that as well.
ArtStation. Is that a
Art
YouTube channel or where would people find that?
ArtStation is basically just an online. Um, it's like an online portfolio. So it's where pretty much every like mainstream artist in the industry puts their online portfolios.
Mm.
So it's a place that you can go for inspiration. Um, I definitely suggest that if you do go to ArtStation, do not get discouraged because every last one of those people started exactly where you are right now. Art is a learned skill. It's just like becoming a mechanic or a cook. anything else. If you have hands, even if you don't have hands, I know people that seriously, I know a paraplegic that just draws by a computer program that follows his eye movements. So
That's
if
amazing.
you, yeah, right.
As someone who follows accessibility things in the video game industry a lot, like that's awesome. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, yeah. So if you find art interesting and you think that it's something you want to do professionally or even just for fun, definitely check out ArtStation because it's such not only a wealth of knowledge but inspiration. So definitely check out ArtStation
All right,
or
so
DeviantArt.
there you go.
Mhm.
And then if you're looking for Dion's work, Pop Culture Classroom's own line of history-based comics, Colorful History. Dion has created a couple of issues of those. And then I know you've also worked with our art manager, Alan Brooks, on The Burning Metronome, which
Yes.
is a well-regarded graphic novel. You can buy it all in a graphic novel form, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what ages is that good for?
I'd say 13 and up because there are
Perfect.
some a bit more adult themes in it, but not too adult.
Okay, there you go. All right, so
yeah.
13 and up, check out The Burning Metronome by Dion and Alan Brooks and Matt Strackbine. And then we're going to take this opportunity to go ahead and close this out. Like I mentioned earlier, Pop Culture Classroom is a nonprofit located here in Denver. Our mission is to educate and build diversity and community through pop culture media, which is what I hope we've done for you today. As a nonprofit, any donations that you guys would like to make to us are very, very meaningful to us. If you're watching on Twitch right now, there's actually a donate button. Otherwise, you'll see a slide real quick that tells you exactly where you can donate. We would really appreciate any support so that we can keep doing things like making educational comics and having free workshops for anyone who is looking to build their skill. Dion, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been awesome. I know I learned a couple of things.
No problem.
And I'm sure we will have you on a workshop stream soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all right, folks.
Alrighty.
Thank you for checking us out, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Everybody take care.